You've been holding on too tightly, to people, to outcomes, to versions of yourself that no longer exist. They told you happiness comes from having more, from love that stays forever, from plans that go your way, from control. But if that were true, why do you still feel heavy, even when life looks good? Why does your mind keep spinning at night, searching, gripping, afraid to let go? The truth? What you're really looking for isn't Morit's release. Release from the past, release from fear, release from the pressure to always hold it all together. And that's where Buddhist wisdom begins, not with gaining, but with unclenching. For thousands of years, the Buddha didn't promise riches or power. He offered something deeper, freedom from suffering, not by escaping life, but by changing how we meet it, not by numbing, but by seeing clearly. Tonight, as you lie here, something will soften. You'll start to notice the breath you forgot you were holding, the tension in your body letting go, the thoughts that once felt urgent beginning to pass like clouds. You don't need to chase peace anymore. It's been within you all along, quiet, steady, waiting for your return. This isn't just another bedtime audio. This is the beginning of your unbecoming, of peeling back every layer that isn't really you, of falling asleep not with worry but with wisdom. You've held on long enough. Now, it's time to let go. Are you ready? Let's begin. And now, with your eyes growing heavier and your breath beginning to slow, we gently step into the first truth, the one most people spend their entire lives avoiding, the one hidden behind every sleepless night, every restless scroll through things we don't need, and every moment we mistake possession for peace. We begin with what we think we own. It starts so quietly: a favorite shirt, a new phone, the first car, a room of your own. Slowly, the things around you stop being just things. They become extensions of who you believe you are. Your identity starts to attach to them, and in that subtle shift, suffering finds its first open door. When you cling to something, there's fear buried underneath. Fear it might get lost, broken, taken. And so even in moments when you have everything, there's a whisper in your chest that says, what if it disappears? That whisper never stops, because deep down you know the truth. It will disappear. Everything does. The Buddha called this illusion anattati, truth, that there is no fixed, permanent self to attach to anything. Not a self that owns, not a self that holds, not even a self that can be found. But the mind doesn't like that. The mind wants to believe, this is mine, this defines me, this proves I exist. So we keep building identities through what we own: my house, my career, my body, my image, my success. And the more we build, the more fragile we become. Because now, peace isn't in ute, it's in the hands of everything that can be lost. The couch gets stained, the phone breaks, the body changes, the money comes and goes, and with every loss, the false self trembles. Because when what you own disappears, who are you without it? You start to see how tiring this is, how heavy it becomes to live a life constantly defending things that were never really yours to begin with. Not truly, not permanently. And this isn't about becoming numb. It's not about throwing everything away or pretending things don't matter. It's about seeing clearly, seeing that clinging turns neutral objects into anxiety traps. Seeing that protecting your possessions can often cost you your presence, and that every time you say, I am this, or this is mine, you're building a cage around a self that was never solid to begin with. Look at how much time is spent maintaining the illusion, cleaning, upgrading, collecting, comparing. The hunger for more doesn't come from need, it comes from fear. Fear of being less. Fear of being left behind. Fear of disappearing if you don't have something to show for your life. But what if your value isn't measured by what you hold, but by what you're free enough to let go of. Think of a time you lost something important to you. Maybe it was sudden, maybe it slipped away slowly. The first reaction is usually panic, then sadness, then a strange silence. But in that silence, there's often something else: relief. Not because you didn't care, but because the pressure of holding on finally cracked open. Attachment is pressure, and pressure weighs on the mind like a constant storm in the background. You don't always notice it until it's gone. People will tell you it's wise to accumulate, build assets, collect things, have something to fall back on. And in some practical sense, that's understandable. But what they don't tell you is that the more you gather, the more you start to believe you are the gathering. And that's the trap. Because when you mistake what you have for what you are, you hand your peace over to everything that can be taken, and the world takes. A house can burn down, a savings account can vanish, a treasured object can break, a reputation can be shattered in a single misunderstanding. That's not negative thinking, that's just life. The question is, when the breaking happens, are you broken with it? Or can you stand in the middle of the ruins and remember you were never the house, you were never the job, you were never the things? This truth isn't meant to make you sad, it's meant to set you free. Because in the absence of attachment, there is space, spaciousness of mind, lightness of being. And that space is where peace lives. Not in control, not in holding, but in the absence of needing anything to define you. Think about the objects that define modern identity: phones, clothes, photos, status symbols. These things aren't evil, but when they become your emotional anchors, every scratch feels personal. Every change feels like a threat. And slowly, you forget how to exist without reinforcement from the outside. Now, hear this gently. You were never meant to be owned by your own possessions. And yes, owned. Because that's what clinging does, it reverses the roles. The things you think you own begin to own your time, your thoughts, your moods. You can spend days upset over a lost item. You can skip a sunset worrying about a car repair. You can miss the present moment while scrolling for more things to buy. But in the end, the real loss isn't the object. It's you. You lose your stillness, your joy, your clarity, all to keep up a story of ownership that was never real. The teaching of anatta isn't abstract. It's not a puzzle to solve with your intellect. It's a lens to see through. It reminds you that there is no permanent you that possesses anything. What you call you is just a stream of thoughts, sensations and feelings flowing through awareness. And what you call mine is just form, impermanent, unstable, empty of essence. That doesn't make life meaningless. It makes life precious. Because when you stop gripping, you start appreciating. Truly. Not in the fearful way that says, I better hold on tighter, but in the open-hearted way that says, thank you for passing through my life, even if only for a moment. There's a difference between using and clinging, between enjoying and needing, between owning and being enslaved. Buddhism teaches that liberation begins not when you get everything, but when you stop needing everything to be yours. So how do you begin to release the grip? Start by noticing. Every time you feel tension in the mind around a thing, pause. Ask yourself gently, what am I afraid of losing here? What would I be without this? Don't rush to answer. Let the question work on you. Let it unravel what feels solid. And then, look closer. Notice how every object in your life has a story attached to it. This is my favorite. This was expensive. This reminds me of them. Those stories aren't wrong. But are they making you free? Try this. Hold something you treasure and let the thought come. This is not mine. It never was. It is only visiting. See what happens in your body. See if a little bit of tightness lets go. It might feel strange at first, like you're betraying something, but what you're really doing is telling the truth that everything you touch will pass, that your job isn't to trap it, but to bless it while it's here. When that understanding begins to root itself in your heart, you start to move differently. You still buy things, use things, love things, but they don't bind you anymore. They don't define you. You stop being afraid of losing them because your center has shifted inward. You find beauty in simplicity, joy in moments, peace in impermanence. And that peace is no longer conditional, no longer fragile, because it doesn't depend on how much you own but on how free your mind is. You may start to notice something subtle but profound. The more you let go of, the more room you have for presence. The room you were trying to fill with decorations suddenly feels more sacred with space. The shelf with fewer objects becomes a place of rest for the eyes. The closet you cleared out becomes a doorway to ease. And it's not just about physical clutter. It's about the mind unclenching. The constant tracking of things quiets down. The comparing fades. The need to prove starts to dissolve. Without knowing it, you begin to return to your natural state, still, spacious, enough. This is the path of inner simplicity, not from denial, but from wisdom. A wisdom that says, you are not your things, you are not your image, you are not the weight of your belongings or the sum of your trophies. You are awareness itself. You are the one who sees it all come and go. And in that seeing, there is no fear, no panic, no need to hold. Just peace. A peace that cannot be bought, broken, stolen, or lost. That's what begins to rise when you stop clinging. That's what comes alive in the emptiness of ownership. A stillness that's always been there waiting underneath the weight. And now, as your thoughts begin to settle, you may feel it something gentle in the center of your chest. A quiet knowing. A truth that doesn't scream, but whispers. You are not what you own. You never were. And in that knowing, you are free. And even when the mind has let go of things, the car, the house, the title, the image, it still clings in a subtler way. Not to objects now, but to outcomes, to how life should unfold, to what should happen next. You can stop needing to own anything and still suffer if you continue to believe that your happiness depends on results going your way. There's this quiet expectation that life should reward effort, that love should be returned, that plans should work out, that doing everything right should lead to ease. But that belief, though comforting, is where suffering begins. It hides in everyday language. I'll be happy when, I'll relax if, it will all be worth it once. These statements seem innocent, but they all carry the same trap, tying your peace to something outside of you, waiting for life to meet your conditions before you allow yourself to feel okay. And when that condition isn't met, the ground slips. That's the suffering the Buddha called dukkha, not just pain, but a deeper kind of friction. The sense that something isn't right, that something is always slightly off, that life is missing the mark. Because even if you get the thing, win the promotion, get the relationship, hit the goal, how long does the joy last? A moment? A day? Then comes the next craving, the next measurement, the next outcome to chase. Conditional happiness is unstable. It's like building a house on sand. Every high is followed by a low. Every success comes with the pressure to protect it or repeat it. You're constantly one step away from loss, one disappointment from collapse. This isn't failure. This is how most people live, and it's exhausting. The teachings don't say don't try, or don't care, or don't engage with the world. They say be free within it. They offer an alternative to chasing outcomes, a steadiness called upekkha, or equanimity. Equanimity isn't indifference. It's not about being cold or detached. It's deep balance, the kind that remains intact whether the news is good or bad, whether the moment feels easy or hard. It's the inner stability of someone who no longer places their joy on the roller coaster of conditions. Think of a tree rooted deeply in the earth. The wind may move the leaves, the storms may shake the branches, but the trunk stays grounded. Equanimity is that inner root. It holds you steady even when life changes course. And life always changes course. Most people mistake results for reality. They think, if I succeed, I'm worthy. If I fail, I'm not. If they like me, I'm lovable. If they don't, I'm broken. But all of these are just interpretations, just stories the mind tells itself. The truth is, outcomes don't determine your value. Outcomes don't define who you are. They simply happen, or they don't. What defines you is how deeply you stay present, even when life refuses to meet your expectations. We've been taught to grip tightly to what we want, but Buddhist practice teaches the opposite: hold everything loosely. Do your part. Act with sincerity, then let go. Not let go as in give up. Let go as in stop needing the result to be a certain way in order to be at peace. You can send the message without needing the reply. You can apply for the job without being shattered if you don't get it. You can love someone fully without being crushed if the relationship changes form. When happiness depends on outcome, it becomes fragile. When happiness arises from within, it becomes unshakable. Equanimity doesn't mean you don't feel. It means your feelings are no longer held hostage by what life does or doesn't give you. You feel fully, but you remain free. This freedom starts with seeing clearly, seeing the nature of outcomes for what they are: impermanent, unpredictable, not fully in your control. Even when you work hard, plan well, and try your best, life still unfolds in ways you didn't expect. Sometimes in your favor, sometimes not. That's not failure. That's just the truth of how things are. And when you begin to live from that truth, the anxiety starts to fade. The grip begins to loosen. The need to manipulate every moment into something perfect loses its urgency. You stop arguing with reality. You start dancing with it. This doesn't make you passive. In fact, it makes you more powerful, because your energy is no longer wasted on fear or control. It's directed toward what you can do, showing up fully, acting with clarity, and releasing the rest. That release isn't weakness, it's wisdom. Equanimity protects your heart from the wild swings of praise and blame, gain and loss, pleasure and pain. These are the 8 worldly winds the Buddha spoke of. They blow through every life. No one escapes them, but you can stop being blown away. You start to witness the highs and lows like waves. You ride them, you don't become them. The reason this is so hard is because we're wired to crave certainty. The mind wants reassurance. It wants control. It believes, if I just do this right, I'll get the outcome I deserve. But life isn't transactional. It's not a vending machine where you press a button and always get what you ordered. Sometimes you give everything and still lose. Sometimes you make a mistake and everything works out. That doesn't mean effort is useless. It means effort is sacred only when it's not chained to reward. When effort is tied to outcome, it breeds anxiety. When effort is tied to values, it becomes freedom. Act because it aligns with who you want to be, not because it guarantees a return. Love because love itself is a gift, not because you expect it back. Give because generosity nourishes your spirit, not because it builds your image. This shift from outcome to presence is radical. It takes practice. You'll forget. You'll slip back into old habits of measuring success by results. That's okay. Every time you return, you grow stronger. Equanimity is a muscle. It builds slowly, moment by moment, choice by choice. You can start with small things: a delayed response to a text, a meeting that doesn't go your way, an idea that's misunderstood. Feel the tightness that wants to react. Pause, breathe, stay. Let the moment be what it is. Notice the part of you that wants to fix it, control it, change it. Instead, practice the discipline of rest, of trust, of letting go without collapse. You'll find that underneath the disappointment is a stillness, a presence that doesn't need anything extra. That presence is your natural state. It doesn't disappear when things don't go your way. It just gets covered by reaction. When you stop tying joy to the next achievement, the next validation, the next victory, you become steady. And in that steadiness, you can do great things. Not because you're desperate to prove something, but because your action flows from clarity, from groundedness, from purpose. Upekkha doesn't erase your preferences. It doesn't mean you don't care. It means you're not controlled by what happens next. Your mind becomes less of a battlefield, more of a sanctuary. You begin to trust life, not because it always gives you what you want, but because you no longer demand that it does. This trust creates a spaciousness. You breathe easier, you think more clearly, you respond instead of react. You begin to feel like the sky vast, open, unchanged by the passing clouds. Every meditation, every mindful breath, every letting go builds this space. The more you release your need for the future to look a certain way, the more the present becomes enough. And when the present is enough, you're finally free. Because the deepest suffering doesn't come from what we experience. It comes from believing that something else should be happening instead. That's the root. And that's what equanimity dissolves. You no longer live with a clenched fist around each hope. You begin to walk with open hands, not empty open. This openness is where resilience lives. It's what lets you meet heartbreak without shutting down, face uncertainty without panic, start again without bitterness. And what's more beautiful is that this openness spreads. People feel it around you. Your presence becomes grounding for others. Your calm becomes a mirror that reflects their own potential to be still. You become less reactive, less rigid, less pulled by highs and lows. And as you grow, so does your capacity for compassion. Because when you're no longer caught in your own chaos, you can hold space for others with love and not judgment. Equanimity is what makes kindness sustainable. It keeps you from burning out, from turning bitter, from collapsing under the weight of expectations. It teaches you to care deeply, but without needing to control. And in that space, a new kind of joy begins to bloom, one that isn't dependent on the weather of life, one that can hold both sunlight and storm with the same open heart. This is the joy that no success can buy and no failure can take. This is the joy of being at peace, not because everything is perfect, but because your peace is no longer at the mercy of perfection. This is the joy of someone who is no longer waiting to be whole. And as the night deepens and your breath continues to slow, let this truth sink in gently. You don't have to keep chasing peace. You only have to stop tying it to something that can be lost. You've done enough. You are enough. And right here, without needing to change a single thing, you can rest. Free. And when you stop tying your peace to what happens, when joy no longer rises and falls with outcomes, there's something else that starts to rise in its place. A quiet pull toward less life, but less clutter, less noise, less of what never truly brought you peace in the first place. You start to feel the weight of excess, the tension of too many choices, the subtle chaos of having too much of everything and not enough of what matters. There is a kind of silence that begins to call you. Not the absence of sound, but the absence of mental overload. This is where spiritual minimalism begins. Not in empty rooms or colorless walls, but in the internal act of removing what doesn't belong. the subtracting of everything that covers your clarity, your calm, your natural state of ease. In a world that teaches us to accumulate, the Dharma whispers a different truth. Freedom doesn't come from adding more. It comes from letting go, not just of physical things, but of inner weight, attachments, reactions, false needs. Minimalism, when practiced from the heart, is not just about space, it's about presence. It's about choosing what stays in your life with so much care that what's left becomes sacred. There's no pressure to live with less for the sake of appearance. What matters is how deeply what remains supports your peace. The Buddha lived simply, not as a rejection of the world, but as a full embrace of what really mattered. He understood that every object carried a pull, a possibility of desire, of grasping, of becoming lost in thought. By having little, he could give everything. His simplicity wasn't deprivation, it was precision. And that's the shift this path invites. Not forced austerity, but clarity. To start noticing what brings friction, what weighs down your attention, what pulls your energy into constant maintenance. The practice begins with awareness, sitting quietly and asking, what am I constantly managing? What do I keep around, not because it serves me, but because I'm afraid to let it go? There's a kind of emotional inventory that unfolds. The shirt that no longer fits but carries a memory. The account you scroll without joy. The plan that no longer feels right but keeps you in motion. All of it becomes a mirror reflecting the state of your mind. When you begin to simplify from the inside, you notice a pattern. The less you carry, the more clearly you can feel. The less you own, the more room there is to breathe. The fewer roles you perform, the closer you get to who you really are. Spiritual minimalism asks you to choose peace over clutter, stillness over stimulation, clarity over chaos. Not just in your home, but in your conversations, in your calendar, in your inner dialogue. And the power in this isn't just quiet, it's transformative. Because what you remove reveals what you were too distracted to see. Silence brings clarity, emptiness brings insight, stillness uncovers truth. This path doesn't promise ease at first. Letting go brings discomfort. There's a strange ache in surrendering things you once believed you needed, but that ache doesn't last. And beyond it is a lightness that cannot be manufactured. You begin to learn the difference between what is useful and what is simply familiar, between what is meaningful and what is just decoration, between what is truly nourishing and what only numbs. Even attention becomes precious. You realize that every moment you give away to distraction is a moment you cannot get back. So you begin to guard your kimono with hardness, but with reverence. You no longer say yes to everything. You let the quiet speak before the impulse replies. You notice the habits that fill space, but not your soul. The patterns that feel productive, but leave you empty. And it's not about doing nothing. It's about doing the right things with full presence. Cutting through the noise so your actions become pure, focused, alive. This is the elegance of subtraction, not loss but refinement. Spiritual minimalism also helps release the false sense of importance we place on busyness. You begin to see that constantly being in motion is not the same as being alive. That chasing 10 things at once often leads you further away from the one thing that truly matters. So you slow down, not to escape, but to feel, to notice the subtle details of now, the warmth in your chest when you rest, the steadiness in your breath when you don't rush, the way silence is not empty, but full of presence. You start to unlearn the craving for more, not because more is bad, but because more is never enough when it comes from lack. You see that peace doesn't come from the next thing, it comes from the absence of need. Even thought becomes part of this clearing. You notice how much of your mental space is occupied by planning, judging, rehashing, so you start to release stories that no longer help, assumptions that no longer heal. You leave room for not knowing, for resting in the space between answers. This emptiness is not a void, it's a sanctuary. In this space, you stop needing to define yourself with achievements. You stop measuring your worth by what you produce. You stop believing that success means constant accumulation. You begin to feel that the more you remove, the closer you get to something sacred, not something outside of you, something you've carried all along, but couldn't hear over the noise. Even speech becomes more intentional. You don't talk just to fill silence. You listen, you pause, you speak when it matters, and your words begin to carry more weight, more heart, more clarity. Relationships become simpler too, not shallow real. You let go of performative connection. You let go of obligations rooted in guilt. You make room for people who bring stillness, not drama. Love that calms, not love that burns. And with this, you stop fearing solitude. Because now, you're no longer surrounded by things that echo your loneliness. You are full with your own presence. You find depth in your own company. Spiritual minimalism isn't a rule, it's a return to what was always true before the world convinced you otherwise. It allows joy to arise from simple things: a clean room, a single warm meal, a quiet morning. You stop needing more because you finally feel the fullness of enough. And this feeling, it's not something you chase. It grows quietly in the space you make for it. The more you let go, the more clearly it reveals itself. You also begin to trust that what's meant for you doesn't need to be held so tightly. You don't cling out of fear. You open your hands, and what stays, stays. What goes, goes. Your peace is no longer tied to keeping. And in this simplicity, a profound gratitude awakens. Because now, everything is seen. The smallest gestures, the ordinary moments. The things you used to rush past are now the very things that soften your heart. You see that clarity was never far. It was just buried beneath too much. The teachings of the Dhamma guide this way of living, not through rules, but through wisdom. Wisdom that sees craving as suffering, clinging as heaviness, excess as a barrier to truth. The middle path is not about extremes, it's about balance. Having what you need, and no more than what you can carry with peace. It's about moving through life without gathering unnecessary weight. There is no prize for holding on to what drains you, no reward for staying tangled in what no longer serves. The freedom you long for comes from the courage to release, to refine, to live with care. You stop measuring yourself by what's visible. You start tuning into what's felt. Peace becomes your new form of wealth, clarity your new kind of success, space your new kind of luxury. And from this place, generosity blooms, because you are no longer trying to fill a hole inside you. You are full enough to give, to share without fear, to let others be without needing to possess. Your energy becomes focused, not scattered. Your life becomes aligned, not reactive. Your presence becomes a gift, not a performance. All of this begins when you choose less. Not from lack, but from deep, inner knowing. The knowing that in letting go, you are not losing. You are coming home. And as your breath softens and your mind grows quiet, allow this truth to settle in your bones. You are not what you own. You are not what you accumulate. You are the space beneath it all. Still, whole, free. And even when you've cleared the space around you, simplified your life, quieted the outer world, there's still one place left that holds weight, the mind. The deepest clutter isn't on your shelves. It lives in your self-image, in the silent, heavy expectations you carry about who you're supposed to be. The most exhausting things we hold on to aren't objects or plans. They're identities, roles, beliefs about how life should be and how we should show up in it. Thoughts like, I should be stronger by now, I should be more successful, I should be happier, I should always know what to do. These shoulds aren't harmless. They wrap themselves around your mind like armor that gets heavier with time. They whisper that you're not enough unless you're constantly becoming something better. They convince you that peace is something you'll earn, not something you already have access to. And yet, what's most painful about should isn't just the pressure, it's the way it turns the present moment into a problem. Every breath becomes insufficient. Every quiet becomes guilt. Every pause becomes failure. This is what happens when your identity becomes rigid, when your self-narrative is so tightly defined that there's no space left to simply be. You wake up each day already in a race against your own expectations. You measure your worth by how closely your current self matches the version of you think you should be. The Buddha taught that clinging to identity is one of the deepest forms of suffering. Because when you believe you are your story, every shift feels like loss. Every failure feels like collapse. Every change threatens the person you think you need to be in order to be loved, respected, safe. But who wrote these rules? Where did these shoulds come from? They weren't born in silence. They were shaped by culture, by memory, by comparison, layered on over time until you forgot they were optional. Until you believed them so completely that you started treating them like facts. And yet, when you look closely, you start to see cracks in the story. Moments where your truth didn't match the narrative, feelings that didn't fit the role. A tug in your chest that said, there has to be another way to live. This is where mindfulness becomes powerful, not just as a practice, but as a path to freedom. Because mindfulness allows you to see your thoughts without becoming them. It lets you witness the shoulds arise without following them blindly. When a thought appears, I should be better at this by now, you learn to pause, to notice, to ask, who says? You begin to recognize that thoughts are not commands, that beliefs are not truths, that identities are not prisons unless you lock the door from the inside. As you stay present with what's actually happening, rather than comparing it to what should be, you soften. You stop resisting the moment and start relating to it. And from that relationship, peace grows. Letting go of should is not about becoming passive or careless. It's about stepping out of the war with yourself. It's about no longer seeing your growth as a constant correction, but as a natural unfolding. When you stop defining yourself by fixed roles, the strong one, the successful one, the kind one, you give yourself permission to be real, to be messy, to be fully alive. You no longer need to perform your worth. You simply return to it. And in that return, there's healing. Because so much of your pain wasn't from what happened, it was from what you told yourself should have happened instead. From the version of life you built in your head that never quite matched the life in front of you. This is where inner conflict fades. When you no longer argue with reality. When you see that you don't need to become anything in order to belong here. That your value isn't conditional. That your being is already enough, even without proving or perfecting. The mind resists this. It wants to hold on to a clear image of self. But clarity doesn't always come from definition. Sometimes it comes from dropping the labels altogether. From being willing to exist in between identities, in the openness of not knowing. The ideal self is always just out of reach. It's shaped by dreams and fears. It promises happiness but often delivers anxiety. Because the more you chase it, the more you feel like who you are now isn't good enough. But mindfulness invites you into the now, not as a place to fix, but as a place to meet yourself honestly. It reveals that peace doesn't come from reaching your ideal. It comes from letting go of the need to arrive. You begin to understand that who you are is not a fixed point. You are a process, a stream of experiences, a changing dance of body, thoughts, feelings, and consciousness. The more you try to freeze that into a solid self, the more tension you create. Freedom lives in fluidity, in letting yourself evolve without needing to match anyone's timeline, in allowing moments of confusion without turning them into failure, in being sad without needing to be the positive one, in being tired without thinking you're lazy. This is the practice of deep compassion, not the kind you offer to others while staying hard on yourself, the kind that looks at your own heart and says, you don't need to be more than this to be worthy. That kind of compassion dissolves the shoulds. It sees the mind's demands and gently steps aside. It listens, not to argue, but to hold. And in that holding, old beliefs begin to lose their grip. You stop needing to be perfect. You stop needing to be impressive. You stop needing to be anyone other than who you are in this breath. And what rises in place of all that effort is relief. Not the relief of escape, but the relief of coming home, of finally allowing the moment to be enough, of letting the inner critic rest, of no longer needing to earn your place. As you walk this path, you start to notice how often others are caught in the same trap. You see their shoulds, their self-judgment, their quiet war against their own becoming. And instead of reacting, you soften toward them too. Because the more you let go of your own rigid identity, the more space you make for others to be human. The more deeply you live in acceptance, the more healing flows through your presence. You become less reactive, less defensive, less interested in being right or seen or approved. Not because you don't care, but because your peace no longer depends on it. Your identity stops being a wall and becomes a window. You can still grow, still evolve, but now your growth is rooted in love, not shame, in curiosity, not self-hatred. You expand not to become worthy, but because it feels like truth. There's no longer a pressure to match a perfect version of yourself, just a desire to live honestly, to move with integrity, to act in alignment with your deepest values, not your loudest fears. And in the moments where should returns as it will, you meet it with awareness. You don't push it away, you don't judge it, you just see it clearly and respond with care. That's how healing happens. Not all at once, but breath by breath, not by erasing the mind's stories, but by no longer believing them so blindly. Eventually, your identity becomes light, flexible, a set of clothes you can change, not a skin you're trapped inside. You hold it all loosely, the roles, the goals, the names. You know they're useful, but not ultimate. You no longer confuse the mask for the face. You no longer confuse your thoughts with truth. You no longer confuse becoming with worthiness. And in that clarity, peace settles in your chest like a deep exhale. You feel more yourself, not because you've perfected the image, but because you've released the need to have one. Now you can rest, fully, softly, without needing to be anyone else. You're no longer chasing the person you think you should be. You're finally at ease with who you are. And once the burden of being someone in particular starts to fall away, something else begins to surface. A subtle but dangerous pull toward overcorrection, the tendency to swing from one extreme to another, from chasing success to rejecting it, from over-identifying with roles to pushing them all away, from being too much to being not enough. Even the act of letting go can turn into something we cling to. When we release one identity, one way of life, one set of beliefs, the mind often reaches for the opposite, as if peace can only be found in doing the exact opposite of what hurt us. But that too becomes a form of attachment, a quieter one, a more noble one maybe, but still tight, still rigid, still another version of the same suffering, just wearing different clothes. Even on the spiritual path, it's easy to become attached to the idea of awakening, to strict practices, to being the good meditator, to rejecting comfort as a sign of weakness, to the belief that more effort always means more growth, that pushing harder makes us more pure. And yet, this striving, even when it wears the robes of self-discipline, can become another trap. The Buddha saw this clearly. Before his awakening, he practiced extreme self-denial, starvation, silence, harsh control. He stripped everything away in search of truth. But it didn't bring him peace. It only made his body weak and his mind clouded. He realized that clinging to extreme seven spiritual once was still clinging. That realization was the birth of the middle way. Not a path of comfort for its own sake, not indulgence, not laziness, but also not punishment, not constant struggle, not endless pushing. It is a path of balance, of steadiness, of staying present without swinging toward excess or deprivation. The middle way doesn't reject discipline, it refines it. It doesn't deny joy, it deepens it. It doesn't discard structure, it softens it, makes it flexible. It invites you to walk with awareness, with care, with gentleness toward yourself and the world. You begin to see that peace isn't found in extremes. It's found in staying close to what's true in this moment. And the truth is never extreme. It shifts, it breathes. It calls for listening, not for rules. One of the greatest risks on any path of growth is turning the path into another performance, another image to maintain, another identity to protect. You start fasting because it clears the mind, but soon you're clinging to the idea that eating less makes you more spiritual. You start meditating to rest the heart, but eventually find yourself judging every distraction as failure. You start living simply, but secretly start competing over who owns the least. This is how even the most beautiful practices can become another layer of attachment. The middle way reminds you to pause, to return, to ask, what's here, right now? Not, what should I be doing? Not, how can I reach the next level? But, is this rooted in wisdom or fear, in love or ego? Non-attachment to extremes means letting go of the belief that you have to suffer to grow. It means releasing the story that ease is weakness, that letting yourself rest is indulgence, that not pushing hard enough means you're falling behind. You begin to recognize that every extreme, even the ones praised by others, carries its own tension. And tension, when left unchecked, always leads back to suffering. The middle way doesn't mean you live in a gray zone of neutrality. It means you live awake to the pull of both sides. You notice when you're chasing intensity just to feel alive. You notice when you're avoiding discomfort out of fear. You stay close to center, not by being passive, but by being deeply aware. There's power in that awareness, power in choosing the gentle path, even when the world tells you to choose the loud one. Power in not reacting automatically to the pull of your habits. And this path is deeply personal. What feels balanced to one person may feel excessive to another. The point isn't to follow a formula, it's to cultivate sensitivity, to notice what opens your heart and what tightens it, to follow the thread of peace, not pressure. Non-attachment to extremes also applies to how we think. The mind loves all or nothing thinking, success or failure, good or bad, right or wrong. But wisdom lives in nuance. It lives in being able to hold contradictions, to say, this helped me once, but now it no longer fits, to allow space for change without shame. You start to unlearn the need for absolute certainty. You stop needing to be completely right or completely wrong. You accept that truth is often a moving thing, that growth is not a straight line, that healing doesn't always look noble, that rest is sometimes the bravest choice. This way of living creates depth, because now you're not avoiding life, you're meeting it fully, without filters, without clinging to how it should feel. without needing to label every moment as success or setback. You walk through pleasure and pain with the same presence, through clarity and confusion with the same breath, through praise and blame without chasing one or hiding from the other. And slowly, you start to feel more whole, not because you've perfected balance, but because you've stopped resisting it. You've stopped swinging so far in either direction that you forget the middle exists. There is a softness that grows when you no longer have to prove anything, when your worth isn't measured by how hard you try or how little you need, when you stop competing with your past self or future goals. Non-attachment to extremes lets you love yourself when you're tired. It lets you respect yourself when you say no. It lets you move through the world with a kind of quiet confidence, the kind that comes from control, but the kind that comes from harmony. This harmony extends to your relationships. You no longer need to be all things to all people. You stop swinging between isolation and overgiving. You stop needing others to agree with you in order to feel secure. You listen more. You argue less. You recognize that truth can be shared without being forced, that boundaries can exist without walls, that connection is not found in intensity, but in consistency. And just like that, the middle path isn't just a concept, it becomes your ground. The place you return to again and again. When life pulls too hard in one direction, it becomes your compass. There's nothing flashy about this way of living. It won't always be noticed, but it will be felt. In the way your nervous system settles, in the way your breath deepens, in the way your mind softens. You'll know you're on this path when peace stops being a goal and starts being your default. When you stop looking for signs that you're doing it right and start trusting how it feels. The mind may still reach for extremes. That's its nature. But now, you have a deeper intelligence guiding you, the part of you that remembers how balance feels, how clear the sky is after the storm of striving fades. You don't need to be the most disciplined, or the most surrendered, or the most enlightened. You just need to be honest enough to see when you're clinging again, brave enough to return to center. And that returning, that's the practice, not perfection, just returning, over and over, with patience, with care, with love. No extremes, no drama, just presence, just now. And as your thoughts settle, as your body softens, let this balance carry you. You've tried the edges, you've touched the high and low. Now, rest in the middle. Here is where you begin to remember the quiet power of enough. And when you begin to walk the path of balance, of letting go of extremes, of not needing life to be either perfect or broken, you arrive at a quieter truth that has always been there beneath every moment. That everything changes, that nothing, not even the most beautiful feeling or the most painful experience, can stay the same. And somehow, even knowing this, we still hold on. We hold on to people as if they won't change. We hold on to moments as if they'll freeze in time. We hold on to versions of ourselves that no longer exist. And when change inevitably arrives, it feels like loss, like betrayal, like something precious has been stolen. But what if the problem wasn't the change itself? What if the suffering came from pretending things could stay still? This is where the teaching of impermanence, anicca, becomes not just a concept, but a path to freedom. Anicca isn't abstract. It's not something you have to believe in. It's already happening, everywhere. Your breath rises and falls. Your thoughts appear and dissolve. Your body ages, second by second. Emotions bloom and fade. Nothing in your experience has ever stayed exactly the same, not even for a moment. Yet the mind resists this. It wants things to last. It wants to capture joy and keep it, to control pain and avoid it. It builds attachments based on the illusion of permanence. But what it holds onto is already slipping away. And that's where the clinging starts. Not out of greed, but out of fear. Fear of endings, fear of change, fear of disappearing with the things we love. But clinging doesn't stop change. It only adds suffering to something that was already going to pass. So the practice becomes learning to live in truth, to stop pretending that things are stable when they are not, to love without trying to own, to grieve without collapsing, to see clearly that everything we experience is in motion like waves moving through the ocean, never still, never separate from one another. One way to internalize impermanence is to begin observing it directly. You can sit with your breath and notice how each inhale disappears into an exhale, how the space between each breath is never quite the same, how your body moves even in stillness, how even the feeling of stillness shifts as you observe it. This kind of awareness isn't passive, it's precise. It tunes you into reality, not as an idea, but as a living process. You begin to see that emotions, no matter how intense, have a life cycle. That joy peaks and softens, that sadness rises and dissolves, that anger flares and cools. Nothing stays. And this is not meant to make you numb, it's meant to liberate you. Because once you see the transient nature of experience, you stop building your identity on temporary states. You no longer say, I am this anger, or I am this pain, or even, I am this joy. You start to say, this is visiting me now, and it will pass. That shift changes everything. It allows you to sit with pain without fearing it will last forever. It allows you to enjoy pleasure without needing to possess it. It allows you to meet people as they are, without needing them to stay the same. You begin to relate to life as a series of moments, not a permanent structure. Each moment is new, alive, changing, and when you live like that, your heart stays open, because you're no longer demanding that anything last. You're just being present and allowing. Letting go of emotional clinging doesn't mean you stop caring. It means you stop gripping. You love fully, knowing that love will shift. You celebrate, knowing the celebration will end. You mourn, knowing the grief will soften. You participate in life without needing it to give you guarantees. This makes space for real compassion, because now you don't have to fix or hold on to anyone's story. You can be with others in their pain, knowing it won't define them. You can forgive, knowing people change. You can trust in the unfolding, even when it's uncertain. And in yourself, you can forgive your past. You can let go of guilt that no longer helps. You can stop carrying old identities like baggage you forgot to put down. Because now you see that even your most deeply held beliefs about who you are temporary. You are not the sadness you once felt. You are not the mistakes you once made. You are not bound to your history. You are changing, even now, softly, quietly, with every breath. There is also a deeper truth to impermanence. The things you fear losing were never truly yours. The people you love are not possessions. The experiences you cherish are not property. They passed through your life, touched you, moved you, and now they live in memory. And memory, too, shifts. This can feel heartbreaking at first, but over time, it becomes a kind of relief, because now you're no longer responsible for keeping the past alive. You're free to meet life where it is, instead of where it was. This creates a kind of emotional maturity. You stop needing people to stay the same in order to love them. You stop resenting change. You start to respect impermanence not as a thief, but as a teacher. And you begin to see the wisdom in transience, the way impermanence sharpens your appreciation, the way it draws your attention to what matters. Because now every sunrise feels like a gift. Every conversation feels more sacred. Every goodbye carries grace. Nothing is wasted when you know nothing will last. One powerful practice is to reflect regularly on the changing nature of all things. You might look at a photo from years ago and simply notice, I am no longer that person. You might revisit a place and feel how it has shifted. You might hold your breath and feel it dissolve. These small reflections plant seeds, seeds of letting go, seeds of insight. Over time, these seeds grow into wisdom, a wisdom that doesn't panic when life turns, a wisdom that doesn't freeze when things fall apart, a wisdom that knows, this too is passing. This truth can even hold you in grief. When someone you love changes or leaves, when something precious ends, the pain is real. But impermanence doesn't mean pain disappears. It means pain moves. It changes form. It softens if you let it. Clinging doesn't make love deeper. It makes love fearful. And love touched by fear always asks for more than it can hold. But love rooted in impermanence knows its own beauty. It doesn't need to last forever to be meaningful. It doesn't need to be controlled to be real. You begin to love without demand, to feel without resistance, to live without needing every chapter to be happy, because now you see the thread that runs through every chapter, presence. And presence, when it's clear, holds everything without clinging. And the more you live this way, the more you see the subtle places where clinging hides, in expectations, in nostalgia, in assumptions about how things should go. You start to notice how tight the body feels when you're resisting change, how soft it becomes when you accept it. This is where the body and mind begin to align. The body learns to release what the mind once held. The breath becomes a teacher, the heartbeat becomes a reminder. Each movement becomes a meditation on impermanence. You no longer fear change. You welcome it, because now you're not using life to build something fixed. You're walking with it, breathing with it, meeting each moment with open hands. And what grows in those open hands is not control. It's trust. Trust in your ability to meet whatever arises. Trust in your strength to hold joy and sorrow with equal grace. Trust in the rhythm of life to bring what's needed, not what's expected. This is not passive. It is deeply alive. It lets you feel everything, fully, without getting trapped, without needing to freeze time. Because now you see clearly, everything you tried to hold on to was already moving. Every experience was already fading. Every relationship was already shifting. And that's not failure. That's the nature of all things. So instead of fighting it, you soften toward it. Instead of clinging, you bow. And in that bow, you are not weak. You are finally free. Free to feel without drowning. Free to remember without grasping. Free to love without fear. Free to be here without needing anything to stay. Because now you know, the present moment is not permanent, but it is precious. And that's enough. That's more than enough. And once the truth of impermanence is felt, not just in theory, but in the heart, when you no longer expect people, feelings, or moments to stay unchanged, new question arises quietly from within. How do you love in a world where everything moves? How do you give yourself fully to others, knowing nothing lasts? How do you offer your heart without trying to trap time or demand return? This is where compassion begins to mature. It shifts from desire to presence, from clinging to offering, from needing someone to complete you, to allowing them to simply be. Love that depends on holding tightly is love built on fear. Fear of loss, of abandonment, of change. But fear makes the heart narrow. It makes love conditional. It says, I'll love you as long as you stay the same, as long as you make me feel safe, as long as you choose me back. That's not compassion. That's possession wearing a softer name. The Buddha's teaching on meta-loving kindness is not about romantic drama or emotional dependence. It is a quiet, steady warmth extended to all beings, without exception. It does not ask for recognition or repayment. It does not attach to outcome. It wishes for the happiness of others, simply because they exist. And yet, metta is not distant or cold. It's not the absence of feeling. It is love purified of craving, love that doesn't need to hold anything to feel full, love that does not collapse when it is not returned, because metta arises from within, not from need, but from understanding. This kind of love feels unfamiliar at first. Most of us have been taught that loving deeply means needing deeply, that if we don't ache when someone leaves, we didn't love them enough. That intensity means sincerity. But real love is not intensity. Real love is consistency, spaciousness, clarity, a willingness to be present with someone without trying to control the story. You can love someone deeply without attaching your identity to them, without building your future around their presence, without making their choices about you. This does not make the love smaller, it makes it more stable, and it allows the other person to breathe. Love with attachment says, I need you to behave a certain way so I can feel secure. Metta says, may you be free, even if your path leads you away from me. This kind of love is not easy, but it is freeing. It is what transforms love from a contract into a gift. In practice, it begins with noticing the expectations you place on the people you love. Whether spoken or silent, these expectations often carry conditions. If they care, they'll reach out. If they really love me, they'll change. If I matter, they'll stay. These thoughts don't create closeness. They create tension. They build walls. They confuse love with control. Letting go of these conditions doesn't mean you accept harm. It doesn't mean you allow yourself to be mistreated or forgotten. It means you recognize that you can care deeply for someone and still respect their freedom. That you can create space for them to grow in directions you didn't plan. That their journey is not yours to write. The most powerful form of love allows others to be themselves without shrinking to fit your needs or stretching beyond their limits. And in that same breath, it allows you to do the same. Metta does not dissolve healthy boundaries. It strengthens them, because when you love without clinging, you are no longer afraid to say no. You are no longer afraid to walk away if respect is missing. You are no longer shaped by someone else's emotions. You meet them where they are, not where you wish they'd be. And you do this not with bitterness, but with calm. The mind may resist. It may say, but this feels distant, like I don't care. But look closer, you do care. You care enough to stop making someone else responsible for your happiness. You care enough to stop demanding that their presence make up for your fear of being alone. This is how self-love and compassion for others begin to meet. You stop needing another person to fill the emptiness inside you because you've made space within yourself to hold your own emotions. You stop grasping for love as proof of worth because you know your worth is not up for debate. And from this place, love flows more easily, more honestly, more gently. You can say, I love you, without needing to hear it back. You can give attention without needing it returned in the same form. You can show up fully without checking how the other person is measuring your value. Because now, your love is not a negotiation, it is a reflection of your clarity. This does not make you passive in relationships. It makes you steady. It helps you see clearly when love is mutual and respectful, and when it's time to let go. It prevents you from staying in something that is hurting you, just because you once felt safe. Non-clinging love creates resilience. It allows your heart to open without fear of breaking. It teaches you to stay present, to appreciate what is here now, without demanding that it stay forever. And if it leaves, you grieve, you feel, but you do not collapse, because you were never trying to own something that could never be owned. This also applies to those who are gone, to people who have passed, to relationships that have ended, to connections that faded. You can still love them, but now that love is free of weight, It doesn't trap you in memory. It honors what was, without needing to recreate it. You begin to love not because someone completes you, but because your heart is open. You begin to love not to be needed, but to be present. You begin to love without fear of losing, because your peace is not dependent on anyone staying. Metta, when practiced deeply, becomes a kind of refuge, a home you carry inside. A warmth that doesn't fade just because someone leaves or changes. It's not fragile because it isn't based on agreement. It's based on understanding that every being suffers, hopes, loves, and longs just like you. And when you see that, your love becomes vast. It includes strangers. It includes people who have hurt you. It includes yourself, especially when you forget everything you've just read. This is not softness that makes you weak. It is strength born from the absence of fear. You become someone who can hold others without needing to hold on to them. You can share joy without fear of its ending. You can sit in silence with someone and feel full. This is how compassion becomes unconditional, not because you're above human emotion, but because you are more present with it. You see that the attempt to possess love is what makes it disappear. That love grows in freedom, not in control. This kind of love doesn't need constant proof. It doesn't need to be loud. It doesn't need to be explained. It is steady, like the ground beneath your feet, like the breath that keeps you alive without needing to be noticed. And in this steadiness, you find a new kind of security, not one built on promises, but on presence, not on labels, but on care, not on fear, but on truth. The more you rest in this kind of compassion, the less you feel lonely, even when you're alone. The less you chase affection, because you are no longer empty. The less you fear being forgotten, because you have remembered your own fullness. This does not mean you stop loving. It means you start loving more fully. It does not mean you disconnect. It means you stop confusing merging with connection. It does not mean you give less. It means you give freely. You begin to understand that love is not something you get. It's something you are. It's something you live. It's something you choose again and again, not because you have to, but because it's who you are becoming. A heart that no longer fears letting go is a heart that can truly hold. And as this night deepens and you soften into yourself, let this truth settle without effort. You can love without needing to possess. You can care without needing to control. You can give without needing to keep. You are safe to love freely. You are safe to let love move. You are safe because your peace is no longer in someone else's hands. And when love is finally freed from clinging, when it no longer wraps around another with fear, when it opens and softens instead of holding tight, something else begins to rise into view. The weight of what has already happened, the memories that tug at the mind, the echoes of past choices, old versions of yourself, moments you wish had gone differently. Even without realizing it, you're still holding on to what no longer exists, expecting it to give answers, identity, or closure. This is where suffering continues to hide not in what's happening, but in what has already passed. The past, as the Buddha taught, is a mental construct. What once existed is gone. It cannot be revisited, touched, or fixed. Yet the mind plays it again and again, hoping repetition will bring relief. It becomes attached to memories, as if they were still real, still alive, still able to be changed. Regret is the signal that something is being clung to. It often arises not because the past was painful, but because there's still a belief that it should have gone another way, that there was a better version, a different choice, a different you. And so the mind keeps revisiting it, layering new thoughts over old experiences, trying to reshape something that no longer exists. This is where the teaching of momentariness, kanikavada, becomes deeply important. It reveals that what we call a moment is not a fixed point in time. It is a rapid arising and passing. Everything form, feeling, perception, thought, consciousness arises and dissolves faster than we can hold. The past isn't behind you, it's already gone before you noticed it. Every thought, every feeling, every impression, every identity is constantly breaking down and reforming. There is no permanent piece of the past you can go back to. There is only memory, which is happening now. And memory is not fact. It is shaped by interpretation, emotion, and repetition. It shifts each time it is recalled. So what are we really holding on to when we hold on to the past? We're holding on to the story we built around what happened. The version that says, I was wrong, they were wrong, this should not have happened, I should have done more. But those stories are happening now. They are not the past. They are the present mind replaying images it believes are still relevant. Clinging to the past also shapes identity. You begin to say, this is who I am because of what happened. You become your trauma, your mistake, your history. But the truth is, the version of you that lived that moment is gone, just like the moment itself. There is no stable thread connecting then to now, only memory and belief. To see this clearly is to begin to free yourself. You start by noticing how the mind returns to certain memories again and again, the places it gets stuck, the emotions it repeats. Noticing doesn't mean suppressing. It means seeing the habit without getting caught in it. Ah, here is the story again. That simple noticing creates space. You can begin to ask, softly, what am I trying to resolve by going back? What do I think I'll find if I keep reviewing this? Often, the answer is validation, or control, or clarity. But those things don't come from the past. They come from meeting the present with honesty, from letting the past inform your wisdom, but not run your life. In Buddhist practice, we don't erase the past. We see through it. We bow to its lessons. We learn to carry memory lightly, not as a chain, but as a gentle thread, something we can touch without being bound to it. This changes your relationship with regret. You stop asking, how do I fix what can't be changed? And start asking, what have I learned? What can I carry forward? This is not denial. This is maturity. This is the mind waking up from its trance. Because while the past cannot be revisited, your relationship to it can always evolve. The story you tell yourself can soften, the tone can shift. You can look back and see not only what went wrong, but also what you survived. Not only the harm, but the healing. And when you see that clearly, you begin to forgive not as a favor to the past, but as a gift to the present. You release the grip. You allow what happened to be just that, something that happened. This includes forgiving yourself, which may be the hardest part, because when regret becomes part of your identity, letting it go can feel like letting go of your moral compass. But forgiveness doesn't mean what you did was right. It means you've stopped demanding punishment as the price of growth. Self-forgiveness is not indulgence. It is honesty, a recognition that the version of you who acted in the past was not the same person you are now, that you too were learning, that you did the best you could with the clarity you had, and that now your work is to live from greater clarity, not from guilt. Guilt that is carried beyond its lesson becomes ego. It turns into a story about how flawed you are. But the Dhamma is not interested in your guilt. It is interested in your awakening, in your ability to meet the present without distortion. Every moment you spend locked in the past is a moment you are not here, not seeing, not listening, not breathing. You are missing your life while staring at one that no longer exists. Letting go of the past also dissolves the illusion of time as a line. In deep awareness, you see that time is not a straight path from then to now to later. It is a collection of ever unfolding moments, each one complete in itself. And when you live this way, you no longer seek resolution in the future. You no longer need closure from a person who won't return. You no longer wait for the perfect moment to feel free. You realize the only moment you can ever touch is this one. This realization doesn't make the past meaningless, it makes it sacred, because it taught you something, and now it has done its job. It can rest. To support this letting go, Buddhist practice invites reflection on impermanence, death, and the changing nature of self. Contemplating death doesn't create fear, it creates clarity. It helps you see that life is too short to carry old stories, that every breath is a chance to begin again. You can also work directly with the body. Notice where past memories show up as tightness, where regret sits as heaviness. Breathe into those places. Let the body tell the truth that the mind avoids. The truth that pain passes when you stop feeding it. There is no timeline for this release. There is only presence, returning again and again to what's here, to what is still alive, to what wants to be felt, now not replayed, but acknowledged. This presence is your anchor, your temple, your freedom. And the more you return to it, the less you need the past to be different. The less you need your younger self to have known better. The less you need to make sense of everything, because you are no longer living backward. You are no longer trying to fix a shadow. You are here, with breath, with awareness, with enough space inside you to hold both memory and possibility without being ruled by either. And in that space, you can finally rest, not because everything is resolved, but because you are no longer trying to resolve what cannot be undone. You are walking forward, not because you forgot the past, but because you've stopped trying to return to it. And the present, for the first time, feels like home. And once the past no longer defines you, once regret no longer shapes your choices, and the need to rewrite old stories begins to dissolve, another form of attachment quietly steps forward, the longing for what hasn't happened yet, the dreams not yet fulfilled, the craving for a better version of tomorrow, not the memory of what was, but the pull of what could be. It's easy to miss because it often feels like motivation, like optimism, like vision. But beneath the surface, a constant reaching takes hold, a restless hunger for outcomes, achievements, relationships, status, stability. The mind says, "I'll be okay when," and suddenly, peace becomes a reward you never quite earn. This is the subtle weight of future fantasies. They begin early, with plans and hopes and goals that sound innocent enough. But over time, these thoughts become identities. You're no longer just walking forward, you're measuring every step by how close it gets you to your imagined ending. And when life doesn't match the picture, disappointment quietly builds. In the Dhamma, craving isn't always loud. Sometimes it hides in beautiful places. It hides in hope, in plans, in ambition. These aren't problems by themselves. But when they turn into conditions for happiness, they begin to create suffering. The Buddha spoke not against effort, but against grasping. Wanting is not the issue, it's the mental tightness around that wanting. The belief that without what's next, what is here is not enough. That belief becomes a prison, and the more you believe it, the more you live for a future that never arrives. The mind clings to visions of the future the same way it clings to the past. It projects images, creates timelines, builds expectations. It rehearses success. It anticipates joy. And while that might feel inspiring, it also traps you in comparison. Every moment becomes a checkpoint. Every task becomes a means to an end. You stop living for the experience itself and start living for what you think it might bring. This future-focused thinking is not always obvious. It can look like daydreaming, or over-planning, or constantly working without rest. But inside, there's an anxious rhythm and urgency that keeps whispering, "Not yet, just a little further." just a little more. Meditation reveals this clearly. Sit still and notice how quickly the mind jumps ahead. What will I do after this? What comes tomorrow? What if things don't go the way I want? The mind creates entire realities that have not happened, and the body reacts as if they are already real. This is why Buddhist practice places so much emphasis on presence, not as a concept, but as a lived discipline. It teaches you to bring the mind back, to anchor it in the breath, in the body, in what can be touched and seen and heard right now. Letting go of the future doesn't mean abandoning all direction. It means loosening your grip. It means setting intentions without turning them into ultimatums, acting without chaining your peace to results. You begin to work from presence, not for reward. You begin to trust the process, not just the outcome. You stop needing every path to lead somewhere specific. You walk because the walking is enough. This creates a quiet freedom, the freedom to act without stress, to care without panic, to pursue without pressure. Because now, your sense of self is not tied to whether or not the future agrees with your plan. And this frees your energy. It softens your need to prove. It quiets the voice that says you're falling behind. You begin to see that the future is not a real place. It's a story in your head, a moving target, a collection of guesses based on memory and desire. When you stop living for it, you begin to live fully now. This shift does not mean letting go of dreams. It means no longer needing them to validate your worth. It means seeing clearly that fulfillment is not a place you arrive at, is a state of mind available now, if you stop resisting this moment. The practice is simple, but not easy. You notice the future thoughts arise. You see the craving for what's next, and you bring the attention back not with frustration, but with patience. You say to yourself, "This breath is enough." Over time, those words stop being a technique and start being true. You also begin to notice how much fear the future holds. Fear of failure, fear of uncertainty, fear of missing out. These fears don't go away by controlling outcomes. They dissolve through presence. When you are fully here, the mind has no room to panic over what has not yet come. Fear fades when you stop feeding it with imaginary stories. Hope becomes softer, too, not something that pulls you out of the present, but something that walks beside you. Hope rooted in presence is resilient. Hope rooted in craving is fragile. Non-attachment to the future doesn't kill ambition, it purifies it. It asks, are you moving because it feels honest, or because you're scared to stand still? Are you growing because you're curious, or because you're terrified of staying the same? This clarity transforms ambition from pressure into purpose. You act because it feels aligned, not because you're trying to escape yourself. And when setbacks come, they will, you no longer see them as signs of failure. They are just part of the path, not obstacles, just turns in the road. You meet them with the same presence you bring to everything else. This is how you begin to trust life again. Not because you know what's coming, but because you no longer need to know. You stop trying to fast forward through difficulty. You stop waiting for the real life to begin. You stop thinking happiness lives on the other side of achievement. And instead, you begin to feel something newer, quiet contentment, even when things are uncertain, even when they're incomplete, even when you don't know what comes next. That contentment is the fruit of non-clinging. It doesn't shout, it doesn't demand. It just sits quietly in your chest, reminding you that this breath, this step, this moment is already whole. And you are already home. And when the chase for the future slows down, when the mind no longer spins in craving for what hasn't arrived, you start to face what's always been waiting in silence. The quiet truth that this too will end. Not just the plans, not just the hopes, but the breath itself, the body, the time you think you still have. What remains when the idea of later is taken away? This is not meant to create fear. It's meant to bring you closer to truth. A truth so often hidden that it begins to feel like taboo, but turning away from it doesn't protect you, it only dulls your life. The practice of Maranasati, or mindfulness of death, does the opposite. It brings life into full color by stripping away illusion. It cuts through distraction and surfaces what matters most. Contemplating death is not about darkness, it's about clarity. When you face impermanence not just as a theory, but as a reality waiting at your doorstep, something inside you wakes up. The mind stops postponing peace. The heart stops bargaining with time. The soul stops waiting for permission. You begin to ask questions differently. Instead of, "What do I want to do someday?" you start asking, "What will I regret if I don't do it now?" Instead of chasing more, you begin wondering what's actually worth keeping. Death contemplation brings urgency but not panic. It quiets the endless loop of postponement. Because once you've held the truth that everything you know will pass, the mind begins to release its grip on the non-essential. You may notice how much energy is spent avoiding this truth. Through constant activity, constant entertainment, endless goals. These are distractions from the reality that your time is not promised. Not in weeks, not in days, not even in the next moment. The practice asks you to look, not away, but directly at this. Not to become morbid, but to become free. Because when you deeply realize that everything you're attached to will end, your possessions, your roles, your body, even your name, you stop confusing any of it for who you are. You begin to live lighter, not recklessly, but with reverence, not with fear, but with full presence. Because now, each moment is no longer a stepping stone to something better. It is the very heart of life itself. Meditation on death also loosens attachment because it removes the false sense of control. So much stress arises from trying to manage outcomes, avoid pain, secure permanence. But when you realize that even the body you care for so carefully will return to the earth, it humbles the mind. This humility is not defeat. It is the beginning of inner peace. You stop needing life to go your way. You stop demanding guarantees. You begin meeting reality as it is fragile, changing, wild, and precious. One of the most powerful parts of this practice is its ability to deepen compassion. When you remember that everyone around you will also die, every friend, every stranger, every person you love, and every person who frustrates you, you soften. The walls come down, grudges lose their power. Ego quiets. You begin to live with an open hand, not because you've given up, but because you understand how little can truly be held. You see that clinging to control, clinging to image, clinging to winning arguments, all of it begins to dissolve in the light of death. This doesn't make life meaningless. It makes it sacred. You pay attention more closely. You listen more fully. You stop leaving your joy for some other time. You find yourself savoring the taste of food, the sound of laughter, the stillness between tasks, not because they last, but because they don't. Death awareness doesn't take you out of life. It drops you deeper into it. And from here, your priorities shift. You stop investing in what doesn't align with your heart. You stop saying yes out of guilt. You stop clinging to people out of fear. You start making decisions from clarity, not confusion, not pressure, not habit. You recognize that most of what consumes your mind is not necessary, that much of what you chase you don't even truly want, that most attachments are reactions, not choices. And now you have the presence to choose differently. This clarity also helps with letting go of people and relationships that have already passed. Not with bitterness, but with grace. Death awareness shows that nothing ever truly belongs to you. You are only a witness, a participant in a dance that has always been moving. And in this movement, there is beauty, not in permanence, but in presence, not in having, but in meeting fully what's here before it leaves. The practice of Maranasati can be done in many forms. Quiet reflection, repeating reminders, walking through a cemetery, looking at your hands and acknowledging they will not always move. Feeling your breath and knowing one day it will stop. You do not do this to become sad. You do it to become awake. To stop living like time is infinite. To stop loving like there's always later. To stop postponing your joy for some perfect future that may never come. As you live with this awareness, your life takes on a different pace. Less urgency to prove, more space to feel, less pressure to become someone, more permission to simply be. You see that you were never meant to carry everything, that you were never meant to keep it all. That loss is not a failure of life, it is part of its rhythm, and learning to move with it is the path to peace. You begin to live with the kind of kindness that doesn't need recognition, the kind of wisdom that doesn't need applause, the kind of presence that doesn't depend on a perfect environment. This is what death teaches best, that love matters, that awareness matters, that the time you give to your inner life is never wasted. And when the time comes for endings, for change, for final goodbyes, you are less afraid. Not because you know what's next, but because you lived this life fully. You didn't wait. You didn't hold back. You walked awake. Letting go becomes less about effort and more about understanding. You are not trying to detach from life. You are letting go of what blocks you from living it with depth and truth. This letting go becomes a daily act, in breath, in silence, in choice. You stop looking for forever. You stop asking for guarantees. You simply keep showing up again and again with a heart that knows time is short and that makes it all the more beautiful. And as you rest now, with the rhythm of your breath and the stillness of your body, let this truth hold you gently. You are here, for now, and that is enough. And when you begin to see death not as an ending but as a mirror that reflects the impermanence in everything, you may start to notice an even deeper pattern hidden beneath all your choices, reactions, and fears. A pattern that isn't just about this life, but something older, something repeated. A cycle so subtle that it often feels normal, so familiar that it hides in plain sight. This is where the Dhamma points to something even more profound, the cycle of becoming, of birth and death, of attachment and reattachment, the cycle known as samsara. Samsara is not only about being born and dying in a literal sense. It is the cycle of habit, of reaction, of clinging, of becoming. It is the wheel that keeps turning because we keep feeding it with our cravings, our aversions, and our ignorance. Every time we react without awareness, every time we chase after or push away, we are spinning that wheel again, not just for lifetimes, but moment to moment. The Buddha did not teach about rebirth to provoke fear or fantasy. He pointed to it as a consequence of identification and attachment. He showed that so long as we cling whether to the idea of self, to feeling, to form, to consciousness, we remain caught in a cycle we cannot control. A cycle that does not liberate, but traps. At the center of samsara is ignorance, seeing clearly the true nature of reality. This ignorance fuels craving, which in turn leads to becoming, and from becoming, new birth arises. Not just literal birth into another life, but mental birth into a new identity, a new thought, a new emotion. It happens constantly. You grasp at praise, and a self is born. You cling to anger, and a story is born. You chase pleasure, and a version of you begins again. That is rebirth. Every time you react to life from unawareness, the cycle repeats. Every time you refuse to let go, you plant the seeds for more becoming. Samsara is not somewhere else. It is right here, in the way we meet the world without understanding. This is why insight, or vipassana, is so vital. Vipassana means seeing things as they are, not as we want them to be, not as we fear them to be, but as they actually are. It is a practice of truth, rooted in moment-by-moment observation. You begin to watch your mind and body closely. You see how thoughts arise and vanish, how sensations come and go, how feelings swell and fade. You start to see that nothing lasts, that even the idea of a solid self is just a collection of movements, physical, emotional, mental. When you see this directly, the grip of attachment begins to weaken. You no longer hold as tightly to identity, to plans, to stories. You begin to soften into the truth of impermanence. And in that softening, you stop spinning the wheel. Vipassana is not about avoiding life. It's about stepping into it with full awareness. It teaches you to meet pain without aversion and pleasure without clinging. To walk through gain and loss, praise and blame, joy and grief with the same clear mind. You observe what arises. You don't react. And in that space between stimulus and response, freedom grows. The cycle of rebirth continues because we are not present, because we are reacting based on past conditioning, because we keep reaching for comfort, control, validation. But with insight, you start to interrupt that cycle. You see the craving rise. You don't feed it. You see the aversion stir. You don't fight it. You rest in awareness and allow things to come and go. Over time, that practice cuts through the roots of samsara. You no longer need the next thing to define you. You no longer need every feeling to turn into a drama. You no longer create identities around your experience. You begin to live more simply, more clearly, more lightly. This does not mean you disappear. It means you stop building yourself through grasping. You may still feel pain. You may still have preferences, but they don't own you. They don't define your reality. You respond with wisdom instead of habit, with calm instead of impulse. And when you live like this, your actions stop planting the seeds of more suffering. You begin to move through the world without leaving more craving behind. Your presence becomes cleaner. Your energy becomes steady. You start to unhook from the endless loop of becoming. This is what the Buddha called the end of suffering, not that pain stops existing, but that your relationship with it changes completely. You no longer feed it. You no longer make it personal. You see it, feel it, release it. That release, repeated again and again, becomes the path out of the cycle. Not a path of denial, but of awakening. You don't escape life, you wake up inside it. And that waking begins the process of liberation. Samsara is not just a theory, it is the lived experience of constantly becoming something in reaction to something else. But once you see it clearly, you begin to choose differently. Not from fear, not from grasping, but from insight. You choose to stay silent when anger arises, not out of suppression, but out of understanding. You choose to speak gently when pain wants to lash out. You choose to pause when craving pulls hard. These choices, though small, are seeds of freedom, and they grow. Over time, your inner world becomes less crowded, less urgent. You no longer need to always be someone, achieve something, prove yourself. You find rest in simply being aware, in just observing the play of life without losing yourself in it. This is what untangles the web, not knowledge, but seeing, not belief, but experience. You sit, you observe. You learn to watch the world pass through you without getting trapped in every thread. You stop spinning. You stop becoming. You start to feel what it means to just be. And from that being, compassion arises naturally. You see others caught in the same web, grasping, reacting, suffering, and you don't judge. You understand. You feel tenderness. You offer space, because you remember what it was like to be bound. This is not detachment in the cold sense. It is love without the poison of possession. It is care without conditions. It is seeing the humanity in everyone without needing them to reflect anything back to you. Vipassana deepens this love because it strips away illusion. It brings you face to face with what is real. And the more you live from what's real, the less you suffer, the less you cause harm, the less you spin. Eventually, the idea of self begins to loosen even more. You no longer need to protect a fixed identity. You no longer define yourself by your roles, your past, or your goals. You begin to experience life more like a flow, not a fixed form. This doesn't make you vanish. It makes you free. Free to act without attachment to outcome. Free to love without fear of loss. Free to speak truth without needing to control how it lands. And in that freedom, the cycle starts to dissolve. Not by force, not by resistance, but by understanding. Because what keeps samsara alive is not life itself. It's the way we meet it, with craving, with fear, with blindness. But once you meet life with awareness, the wheel slows, the clinging stops, the becoming fades, and in its place there is peace. A peace that doesn't need anything to continue. A peace that has nothing left to prove. A peace that is no longer part of the web. And as the cycle of becoming begins to dissolve, not through force, but through insight, something unexpected begins to reveal itself. Even as craving weakens and identity loosens, there's often one form of attachment that lingers more quietly than all the rest. Not to pleasure, not to status, not even to self-image, but to pain. To the past hurts that shaped us. To the stories of how we've been wronged. To the familiar weight of suffering we've carried for so long that it now feels like home. This is where the mind clings in its most subtle form, not to what feels good, but to what feels familiar. Not because we want to suffer, but because suffering gives us something to be, a reason, a narrative, a self. The Buddha saw this clearly, that beyond all the noise of craving and distraction, many people remain trapped in suffering not because they haven't had the chance to heal, but because they've grown attached to the identity that pain has given them. The story becomes a shield, a justification, a definition, and slowly the pain stops being something that happened and becomes someone you are. This attachment to suffering is not weakness. It is the mind trying to feel safe. It says, if I let go of this story, who will I be? And that question keeps the pain alive. It makes healing feel like a threat, not a possibility. We cling to our pain because it gives shape to the self, because it helps us feel seen, because it once protected us from harm. But what once protected can also imprison. The Buddha's teachings gently invite us to look deeper, not to erase what happened, not to deny the wounds, but to stop using them as the foundation of our identity. To begin seeing the difference between a story that helps us grow and one that keeps us stuck. The first step is noticing the story, the one you tell yourself over and over, the one that says, I was hurt, so I can't trust, or I was betrayed, so I can't open, or I failed once, so I'll always fail. These stories may feel true, but they are still stories. They are not who you are. They are not the present moment. When you identify with suffering, every part of life becomes filtered through that identity. Even joy is approached with caution. Even love is met with suspicion. Even rest feels undeserved. And so suffering continues, not just because of what was, but because of how the mind continues to relate to it now. This is why awareness is so powerful. When you begin to sit with what hurts without merging with it, the space between you and the pain begins to grow. You realize that the pain is not permanent, that it changes, that it speaks, but it is not the whole voice of your being. From this space, you begin to question, am I still living in the wound, or am I allowing myself to move through it? The practice is not about forgetting. It is about releasing your need to use suffering as proof of who you are. You start to see how often your pain becomes a way to avoid growth, a way to resist responsibility, a way to feel safe in familiar discomfort. And you also begin to see how much compassion is needed, not just toward others, but toward yourself. Because the moment you stop blaming the world and start taking ownership of your healing, something powerful begins to shift. You no longer wait for the past to be undone. You no longer wait for apology or acknowledgement to feel whole. You begin to give yourself permission to be free. That freedom doesn't come from denying what happened. It comes from no longer using what happened to justify closing your heart, no longer needing pain to keep you alert, no longer holding on to sorrow because joy feels unfamiliar. The Dhamma teaches that all things arise and pass. That includes suffering. But when we hold on to it, when we rehearse it, when we feed it, when we make it our name, it stays. It stays not because it must, but because we keep inviting it back. To break this cycle, you practice turning toward the pain with clarity, not narrative. You feel what's there without building more around it. You learn to sit with the ache without turning it into an identity. And slowly, the mind stops needing it. You also begin to notice how often pain becomes a way to connect, how we bond through wounds, how we measure depth by shared hurt. There's nothing wrong with vulnerability, but pain is not the only thing that connects us. Joy does too, presence does too, but we must be willing to step out of the shadows of our stories to feel that. This doesn't mean healing is linear. It doesn't mean the pain disappears overnight. But it does mean you stop organizing your life around it. You begin to see that healing is not about fixing yourself. It's about remembering who you were before the story took over. And sometimes, pain becomes a badge, a way to signal depth, to feel special, to explain why you don't try. But the truth is, your worth is not measured by your struggle. You don't need to suffer to deserve love. You don't need to stay broken to be seen. When the attachment to suffering loosens, lightness returns. You find yourself laughing more, trusting again, taking risks without expecting disaster. Not because life is suddenly perfect, but because you no longer expect it to keep repeating the past. This is the heart of freedom, not that you never feel pain again, but that you no longer use pain to define your reality. You meet each moment fresh, without dragging the past into it. You meet yourself with softness, not shame. You may still carry scars, but scars are not wounds. They are reminders of your strength. They are not chains unless you wrap yourself in them. And in this way, the Dhamma becomes not just philosophy, but a path home. Home to the part of you that never needed to be protected by suffering. Home to the awareness that sees clearly, feels deeply, and chooses peace again and again. You begin to understand that letting go of pain is not betrayal. It is not forgetting. It is choosing not to suffer twice. It is choosing to live now, not then. And the more you live now, the less you need the old story. The less you need to repeat it. The more space you make for something new to grow. That space is where peace lives. And it's always been yours. And once the grip of suffering begins to loosen us, the old stories lose their power to define who you are. What remains is something even more fundamental. A question that sits beneath all your thoughts, feelings, and identities. A question that whispers not about what you've been through, but about who or what is experiencing it all. The deeper you look, the more you realize how hard the mind tries to find something solid in the middle of it all. A self to protect, a self to explain, a self to hold together. But is that self actually there? The Buddha taught that what we call self is not a single permanent entity. It is a process, a constantly shifting arrangement of parts. This process is made of 5 aggregates: form, sensation, perception, mental formations, and consciousness. These are known as the skandhas, and they are what we cling to when we say, "This is me." But none of these parts are fixed, none of them stay, and none of them, on their own or together, can rightly be called a true self. Form is the body, the physical matter. It changes from the moment we are born. It ages, breaks down, heals, decays. It responds to environment and time, to food, to illness, to rest. And yet we often say, "This is my body," as if it is who we are. But the body shifts every second. Cells die and regenerate, muscles weaken and grow, bones change shape. What in it can be owned? Sensation is the second aggregate, the raw data of experience. Pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. We feel hunger, we feel tension, we feel warmth. Sensations arise and fade constantly. You cannot hold on to a feeling. It's there, and then it's not. And yet when sensations become strong, the mind clings. It says, "I feel pain, so I am pain." But sensation doesn't last. It doesn't have personality. It's not personal. Perception is how the mind labels experience. Seeing a shape and calling it tree, hearing a sound and identifying it as music or noise. It's fast, automatic. It helps us navigate the world. But perception is not truth. It's filtered by memory, emotion, bias, and it changes. What once seemed beautiful may seem dull now. What once triggered fear may now feel safe. Perception depends on context, not essence. Mental formations include thoughts, emotions, reactions, intentions. These are the stories and habits that build your inner life. They shape how you respond, how you choose, how you plan. But they, too, are not stable. A thought that feels important in one moment can dissolve the next. An emotion can rise like fire and cool into stillness. Mental formations are built by causes and conditions. They are not you. They are patterns playing out. Consciousness is the 5th aggregate. It is awareness itself, the knowing of experience. It is not content, but the presence of knowing. Consciousness depends on contact. There is eye consciousness when there is form to see. There is ear consciousness when there is sound to hear. But there is no unified, constant observer behind it all. It is a process, not a person. Together, these 5 aggregates make up what we often call a person. But none of them are fixed. None of them last. None of them exist independently. They arise from conditions, and they pass. To cling to